Hello everyone, this is Void Alison here. I'm going to introduce myself quite quickly. So I had just been streaming yesterday, I think it was, my last stream, and I did leave off on this note about the Void cryptogram. I have a few videos out about encoding your own cryptogram as an artist, and I mean like providing meaning in your title as a brand with Gematria, which is a practice of coding numbers into letters and words. So yeah, I want to tell my story, and hopefully it helps you all discern what you want to do if you're just starting out. And I will let you know when I first began my YouTube. It was the year 2018, and I had not heard of Gematria at that time, so I had just discerned for myself. I thought NetVoid sounded like a cool name. It was during the time when net neutrality was a thing in the news, about they were going to figure out if the internet was going to be accessible for everyone, or if they were going to tier the internet in terms of access levels depending on a gate portal scheme. And I thought, well, how interesting. Like, it doesn't matter if we're on the internet or not, we still as consciousness and humanity are still connected despite the internet. So they can take the internet away from us, we'll stay connected. So the paradox of NetVoid felt sentimental to me. And lo and behold, void and empty is in the Bible in Genesis, in the first chapter, really. So it's a beautiful word to me, but I had no idea what the Gematria was. So it wasn't until 2020 when I officially heard of Gematria and was using the Gematria calculator online that I typed in NetVoid into the calculator, and I thought, wow, 89, that number doesn't mean a lot to me. What more can I figure out? And I found this match to be the most interesting, per se. I found that King James and the exact signature that James used during his reign in the 1600s in England, which is where I live right now, was incredible, because I'm a fan of Shakespeare, and King James was a patron of the arts of the Shakespearean era. So let's get to know a little bit more about this little riddle that I discovered and how I apply it to my own entertainment purposes for this channel through the lens of which I decode, if that makes any sense. And there's some comments already, so hi, thank you for joining me today, and I appreciate the time to learn a bit more about me. I am going on vacation soon. I live out near in the north of England, but I'm going down to London for a week just to visit. So I just wanted to leave these notes kind of to clarify who I am as an artist, and here's my presentation. I hope you're all doing well and that your Tuesday is going all right. So I have a few slides. It's only 17. So King James 6 of Scotland, I of England. The V is a 5 and the I is a 1 in Roman numerals. So 6 of Scotland, 1st of England. And as you know, Queen Elizabeth I handed the throne to King James, 6 of Scotland. So he was the first James in English history reign, but he obviously wasn't the first English king. What he did was just unite, from my understanding as an American, he united the United Kingdom, because before England had its own monarch and Scotland had its own monarch, but King James became the first to agreeably rule under Scotland and England, and some parts of Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, he was a patron of the arts. Someone said, just wanted to stop in and say much love and give the channel a like. Oh, thank you, appreciate it. I hope this explains a bit more about what this channel's story is. Keep going here. I'm assuming you already know Gematria, so English ordinal is quite basic. But if you don't, I do have a few playlists in my YouTube channel. Let me bring it up for y'all. Gematro.com is the calculator I use on my channel. And this is my YouTube channel. If you want to find some playlists to learn about Gematria, do check them out here. Probably what'll be good for you if you're just beginning and want to get to know a little bit more about decoding and the ciphers that we use the decoding playlist is really cool, but right next to it is the encoding playlist. Well, this video will live in the encoding. So if you want to learn how to uncode, create brand terms that have meaning to you as an artist and therefore meaning to the community that you're building. These are the tutorials that I'm making now. And yeah, and if you check about, it does say I started my channel in 2018, but like I said earlier, I didn't know Gematria in 2018, so it took me 2 years to decode my own username, which was a completely organic decision for me to name my channel that, but I'm reverse engineering and figuring out, oh, okay, if I organically chose this name, what meaning did it have to me spiritually, emotionally with Gematria? And that's super important for any artist journey, I think. I want to get back to my presentation now, so I'll show you now that you know a bit about English ordinal. It's just the alphabet ordinal ordered from 1 to 26 if you're new. King James and 𝓮𝓯RX, and I'm taking the 𝓮𝓯RX straight out of an original source document where in archaic times in the 1600s the great vowel shift in English hadn't happened yet, so they used the I and J interchangeably during James's time. But he was mostly known to write in archaic English because he was from Scotland and the language there was quite flourished with the ancient spellings. If you look at his work, it's mostly he does write himself 𝓖𝓮𝓯 as his signature. So I thought that was fascinating, and I just took 𝓮𝓯RX and put it in the ordinal. This is a modern English cipher, so it wouldn't have been applicable maybe, but I think it's really cool that it matches King James and this channel. And what King James stood for is quite fascinating because he was a patron of William Shakespeare. And if you put in James and WS, which is the initials of William Shakespeare, WS, you also get 89, like the direct quote here, his signature. And my name, that's my spelling with my second name initial, Alison Sarah Bauer. So that matched too. That was organic. And I think it's cool to call this channel like about a fallen angel channel, because if you look in the Bible, there's all these stories about angels and the Nephilim, and it's so related to King James's story, who would go on to author the King James Bible. Not only was he a great poet, but he was also a producer of this text. And musician, because that's where I'm also developing this story. Whatever I gather here in terms of my personal interest in the story of King James and the history of cryptography, which involves William Shakespeare and all that, I'm going to relate into music as well. So I thought it was cool. And my favorite artist, Jimi Hendrix, you'll often hear him in some interviews say music is a religion to him. So I think that's interesting how, you know, King James is the king of rock and roll. And you get this like religion matching musician. I think that's beautiful with the whole King James storyline, because obviously religion was important to the monarch of King James as well, who was a Protestant, and he was exposing the order of the Jesuits, which at the time he spelled it 𝓖𝓮𝓯RX. So if you're familiar with Zachary K. Hubbard's work and exposing the Jesuit order, the JESUIET, well, you will find King James was exposing the order of the Jesuits with the I. It's the same faction and order, and he even, in his political works, King James called the Pope the seat of the Antichrist. So here we are, this Protestant king who became King of England thanks to Queen Elizabeth I, who was a very powerful ruler, and she had consorts, you know, John Dee, which is a famous cryptographer, taught Sir Francis Bacon, and Sir Francis Bacon and King James would end up collaborating on the King James Bible. So you could say that there's a lot hidden in cryptography in the King James Bible, specifically because of King James and the career of William Shakespeare, who might have been the bulk of the writing for that, might have been Sir Francis Bacon, who was an alleged son of Queen Elizabeth I. So she and John Dee were kind of the older generation, and then King James and Sir Francis Bacon came after Queen Elizabeth the first 𝓮𝓯𝓪, so they were the second generation of major cryptographers. But all those people in these history timelines of 1500s and 1600s, when archaic English and modern English was still flipping about with the great vowel shift and they weren't sure, that's all amazing to document. And that's what exactly, if you're going to learn Gematria, and English is important to you because Gematria is a Hebrew word, like Greek isopsophy. Isopsophy is the same thing as Gematria, but it's a Greek word. Gematria is a Hebrew term, but cryptography is an English term and is applicable for anyone. So you could say you're doing modern English Gematria, but you're doing modern English cryptography. It's the same thing. And I thought it was interesting, like, if you look on the Wikipedia for King James, it will say King James 6 and I. And that exactly matches my name plus my date of birth, which is February the 8th, 02/08/1992. And what do I love vlogging about? Project Bluebeam. That's exactly what I use Gematria and cryptography for, is to decode the news, to understand Project Bluebeam. So why is this organic match with not only the username that I organically chose in 2018, and later on in 2020 I'm decoding this and finding these parallels. Like, you could say I'm stretching it, and that's beautiful. That's part of encoding. That's what encoding is. Like, you're trying to stretch these ideas and understand, okay, what do I want to do with this artistically? And here we are. So moving forward, I do see some more comments, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It is a quick stream. As I said, I am going to London quite soon, today actually. So soon you will see me out there. But before I leave, I just wanted some formal stream where I kind of introduce this channel a bit more. So as I said, the Wikipedia of James 6 and I, if you directly put that in the calculator, you will match my name. And I just love how you can say he was a terrible king, and that's fair enough. But in this writing, it says, under James, the golden age of Elizabethan literature and drama continued with writers such as William Shakespeare and Sir Francis Bacon. So does the good outweigh the bad? I think so. Personally, I've delved into his work, and I find his writing to be incredible, and the collaborations that he did inspired my entire life. So yeah, we'll see a bit more, and hopefully you can judge for yourself what you think of this certain King James, which is very auspicious, has a lot of conspiracies about him. I have my own personal ideas, and I'm going to reveal them further through this channel, as the work does uncover. But it does go on to say James was a prolific writer, authoring works as 𝓮𝓛, which is his first major work. I've talked about it before. It's the Socratic method. It's beautiful fiction, but incorporating satire of the times he lived in during the witchcraft trials. The True Law of Free Monarchies, 𝓬𝓱𝓲𝓪, which is passed on to his son. It's like how to be a rightful king, how to be self-educated. You're responsible for the country, so carry yourself well. This is kind of writing that he would write. And let's keep going. Again, thank you for joining me, and hopefully this is interesting to you too. Oh, some comments. Amazing job. Thank you. Okay, so I do spell my name with one L, but I appreciate the comment. That's nice to meet you. So again, King James and James would have been spelled differently. I did take the James, which is how King James probably would have liked to been referred to himself, as I proved earlier with the official signature with the I. And look, that matches my nickname with my middle initial and my last name, Ali S. Bauer. And this king tried to avoid, he was committed to peace, and he tried to avoid involvement in these wars, one of them which was a war with Spain. So England, during the monarch of James, was trying to be rather peaceful with the England monarchy and the Spanish monarchy. And lo and behold, my mom is from Spain. I currently live in England, but I thought it was really cool to hear about an English monarch king who was a peaceful king, who patroned the arts and also was kind to the country that my ancestry is from, which is Spain. So this is why I have even more invested interest into this king. Yeah, I am dual national. So I was born in the United States, but my parent is from Spain. So I have two passports, dual national, and I currently live in the UK. So here's a little quip that I wrote, and it says, where I am now, it's 2021, and it's like the 410th anniversary of the King James Version Bible. So 410 years since 1611, right? So 1611 plus 400 is about 2000, plus 10 is about 2010. I might have gotten that. Yeah, it's about right, because 1611 plus 10 would be 2022. Yeah, 21, about right. 410th anniversary of the King James Version Bible, and I'm in his home country, England. Well, no, he was born in Scotland, but you know, he ruled over England, so it's technically he belongs here. James, which I still wonder why his name equals to Project Bluebeam, King James VI, which I proved earlier, and why his nickname is 𝓮𝓯RX, which I proved earlier, right? And I thank him for doing the best he could, even if his consciousness erred, like if his work had erroneous, you know, thoughts or ideas in it. And his work wasn't supportive enough of women. You could say that on some degree, but you could also argue the other lens. So that's what's interesting about this character. So if it weren't for me, I'd despise him for not doing enough. Yet I can see why Demonology was written in the pen of someone truly curious, intellectual, and compassionate and sane. So yeah, King James wrote this treatise called Demonology. It's a satire fiction, and you could say, like, right off the bat that name sounds demonic, but you have to understand what it took him years to write this, and it was about the witchcraft trials, and he's trying to bring in audiences to understand what was going on. And we could get into the witchcraft trials in a whole nother video, because I think it's super important to make the comparison between witchcraft and the mandatory BACCINATION, which equals 666 in English Sumerian, all three of those. So it's really important to understand why the witchcraft trials occurred as they did. And yeah, you could probably blame the order of the Jesuits, or the Jesuit order, or the Pope, the Antichrist, for enacting the hoax that was the witchcraft, but they were also creating satanic rituals. So yeah, it was a hoax, but it was also a perpetually created horrible satanic rituals that were occurring. So King James had many threats to his life, and this is because I've researched so much. So, like, don't take my word for it, do your own research. But from my understanding, like, there was a gunpowder plot, which is still celebrated today in England to protect and honor the reputation of the king that survived the gunpowder plot by the order of the Jesuits to kill him, because he was a severe Protestant, as we can see. But through his work, this was before the King James Version Bible. This is 1597. This is his first work into the world of literature, and it holds up because the way he used the Socratic dialogue. And I'm going to explain that in just a moment. And why that Socratic dialogue is important to me is because I think it's the epicenter of art. You can look it up, Demonology 1597. This would have been the original cover or something close to it. And the way it's written, in form of a dialogue, again, because it's that archaic English where they flip-flop some of the vowels like U and V or I and J. The Jesuit order matches that in Project Bluebeam, and this is the modern cipher. So I'm just kind of developing my own curiosities here. Like, it's probably not the most unbiased work here, but it's interesting to me in this channel, so I'm sharing it with you. And I thought it's interesting. I call it archaic English all the time because I don't think it's suffice to say Bacon invented archaic ciphers, because John Dee was his, teacher, and Queen Elizabeth I before her, and the practice of simple Gematria ordinal has been around since the beginning of phonetic sounding Phoenician or Greek or Hebrew. So it's not enough for me to call it the Baconian ciphers, because King James was probably using them too. So I call it the archaic English ciphers. That matches my name. I thought that was funny because I always talk about this. And Scots King, an Englishman, and VVIERVS, an Englishman. These are characters in this Demonology book. So I thought it was interesting that he's using Socratic dialogue to people, right? So he's using an Englishman that he doesn't really give a name to. So I just put, it's kind of like, here's an Englishman. And then here's Vierves. I don't know how to call his name. Vierves. So he has these two conversations, and they're talking, what is witchcraft? We'll kind of see. So you can see this archaic English, that's not how we spell in modern times. This would be difficult to read for a lot of English speakers now, but that's the way of the day back then in this 1500s, 1600s. But something like the school of rudiments of the devil, you know, he's talking about happened when in such times and ages as this is special. In the instance of astrology, which is one of the special members of the mathematics. And look how he spells mathematics. It's not your average regular modern English spelling of mathematics. And wow, that's gorgeous spelling. I pulled it in the calculator and wow, it matches this hoax and scripted news and Masonic ritual and all these really, in Christianity, all these big 155 numbers. So I'm like, hold up, what are they doing? Because this is a beautiful word, completely neutral, not satanic at all. And at that time, I think the consciousness of the world was struggling to identify if you're into astronomy, if you're into geomancy and mathematics, and you're a woman, then you must be a witch. But the fact is, they were trying to sort out right from wrong in that era, and they simply didn't know. So in this article, the king is trying to separate the benevolence from the Satanism and say astrology and mathematics are great, you know, satanic rituals with blood worship, that's the witchcraft. So it took him to actually write it down in this method for the consciousness of humanity, and my understanding, to be able to look at it through the lens of a sane, neutral stance of let's hear, you know, both situations out. And he does do some translating with, you know, originally Greek words, which again just shows that he's an intellectual and not just writing fluff. It's great stuff. He also mentions another great cryptographer, Cornelius Agrippa, which a lot of you know as the Agrippa cipher, the Jewish cipher. So here he is name dropping another cryptographer, and you're like, oh, you actually like know about, you know, the history, and you're connected. Exactly, that's right. So if you read his work, it's fantastic in my opinion. Okay, so Gematria Fake News often talks about Zachary K. Hubbard. You know, he says that it was Manly P. Hall in 1928, through the Secret Teachings of All Ages, that Zach realized the origins of Gematria. And it's through this chapter about the cryptogram that it says in the numerical cipher, A becomes 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on, both I and J as 9, and both U and V as 20. Do you see that? That's because he's talking about archaic English. Now, a lot of y'all might call it bacon simple. I call it archaic English, but it's the same cipher. It's just I and J have the same number, and U and V have the same number, and the same thing with that cipher. Same cipher, different names. I call it archaic English. Some call it bacon simple. But the source of this is the Secret Teachings of All Ages, but of course it would have been used in the 1500s and 1600s during the time of Shakespeare. And let's see what else we have. Don't want to talk too much, but I am leaving soon, so I kind of just want to get all this out there to have a better understanding of me. So from archaic English, we do get the modern English ordinal that we use nowadays. But again, it's important to note that in Manly P. Hall's original source, he is talking about archaic English, and this is the source of English Gematria. It was used during those times. Almost done here, just a few slides actually. Now we're just gonna take a brief look at the cryptogram of the Shakespeare. So he was a great King James, great admirer of poetry and the drama. He was taught by, you know, very influential people, and it's important that he was a patron because James was, you know, a lot of the books from Shakespeare were written to appease King James, and because he was directly funding it. So I'm pretty sure Macbeth and King Lear were dedicated to King James. again, it's important to note the archaic English of his time and how he preserved it in his own writing as a poet, as a political authoress, as a king, and also as part of the crew of William Shakespeare, perhaps, and authoring the King James Version Bible alongside Sir Francis Bacon and encrypting so much numerical information in these literature books. Yeah, you wouldn't change the language of Shakespeare, so why are we changing the language of the King James Version Bible? Which is happening. You know, a lot of people read the modern English spelling, but if you really want to get the source Gematria of at least the modern English, of the English, you should look in the archaic Bible. And that's exactly what I would do. I might do like chapters of the Bible until we've covered it all. That would be a really cool playlist to cover it all. I think it's important to like document and understand the Bible so that you are well versed and can stand up in a debate, you know. So yeah, this Holy Bible is gorgeous. Out in 1611, look at the work that Sir Francis Bacon and King James put into this. I mean, you could call this an art, a pictorial cryptogram. There's information in these pictures from 1611, the original source, that have more occult meaning that I could understand, but the more we look into it together, the more fascinating things we can figure out. And yeah, even if you're not Christian or Protestant or you don't even respect the Bible, it's interesting to know the level of detail that went into this, right? And again, the beauty of the spelling. So again, that's the kind of the end of this presentation of why NetVoid has this cryptogram with King James. Again, this is the same man who wrote the Holy Bible, well, really authored, he didn't write it. He had a team of, you know, how many translators to translate the Bible from the original sources. But he did author it, and it is his name on it, the King James Version Bible. So the same man who authored this Holy Bible wrote a book called Demonology. Interesting. And if you're not well versed in the history, this could look really appalling, like, oh, is he into demons literature? But again, no, if you can see combined his efforts of standing up against the order of the Jesuits, proclaiming that witchcraft is wrong to include satanic rituals, and separating mathematics as something that you should preserve, and becoming patron of the arts. That's what this channel is about. So incredibly thankful that you're here today and sat through this boring presentation. If I have anything else, I'm going to just quickly browse, but other than that, thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. If you haven't already, I do appreciate it. Let me just quickly pop that up. There we go. So my channel, again, that's the end of this cryptogram tutorial of why I named my channel and the year and how I learned about Gematria later, but I can still use the cryptogram, the value, in encoding my own understanding of my own channel. And I recently said that I don't want to monetize. Now, YouTube does put ads up on anyone's channel if you're using the service. So YouTube is making some sort of clickbait income on all of our channels just for using the platform. Now, that really frustrates me because I don't want viewers to land on my channel and have to sit through an ad and think, oh, she's reaping the profit from these ads. Oh, I'm not. Definitely not. And I don't even have viewers enough to gather any sort of stream like that. So that's not been my game plan with this channel, to be like, oh, I'm so excited to get some subscribers so I can monetize. Why not? No, I don't even want that to be down the line in the future. I really enjoy being a public speaker and speaking my mind and having the freedom to say what I like. And that's the spirit of NetVoid. That's the spirit of the King James story. And yeah, let me show you some more articles just really briefly. I wish I could find that Seed of the Antichrist link, but Here's some copy of the Demonology in its original form. It's beautiful work. It's gorgeous in my opinion, and you could read this for so many times. And you see, this is what I mean by Socratic dialogue. You'll have one character saying something and the other responding. So that's pure fiction, but you're including a political piece, so you're adding incredible value. And I think, let me just find it, because I could actually find that where he says Order of the Jesuits really quick. One moment. Sorry, my mic was off. Let me repeat that. So it seems like King James had written in his political works the Jesuit, or at least the spelling of I-E-S-U-I-T-E, many times. So you can use this political writing from him as evidence and source that the Jesuit order had been around for the long time, and there has been proof that they were called the Antichrist before. Like, let me keep going. See, he's talking about the gunpowder treason, the Antichrist and the Pope, the oath of allegiance to the Pope, powder traitors, he calls them. And let me just read you the title of this book. It's called The Political Works of James I. You can find it, and he's talking to, I'm pretty sure, James, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain. He's talking to maybe the Pope himself. Apology for the oath of allegiance, because I think the Pope at that time wanted all the kings to sign some oath of allegiance to the Pope, but King James was one of them that wrote back and was like, listen here, we've been kings for a long time, like, we're not going to sign allegiance to the Pope or whatnot, so this is my apology for not signing on, but excuse me, because like in the Bible, like it says, the Antichrist will be revealed in Revelations, and who other than the Antichrist but the seat of the Antichrist being in Rome, and everyone knows that. And, okay, well, I'm obviously modernizing the jargon, but it's something similar. That's what I got out of it. Let me just find the seat of the Antichrist. He spells it funny too. Seat. Antichrist. See? Oh, here is that. This is the one. Let me just put it, make sure it's. Okay, can you see this? So he says, this is the political writings of King James, and he says, can you hear me? I hope my mic is okay. Time of the Antichrist coming be, and with this papists do also agree, whereby appeareth that Babylon, which is Rome, whoa, okay, and then he goes, shall be the seat of the Antichrist. More sound effects. So It appeareth that Babylon, which is Rome, shall be the seat of the Antichrist. So he's saying the Pope is the seat of the Antichrist. So it's very complicated writing, but that's what I got out of it, and I think it's hilarious that he outright, has this writing set out to the Pope in the order of the Jesuits back in the 1500s, because he was a Protestant king. So if you find that pretty hilarious in terms of where cryptography has ended up accusing the Jesuit order, still to this day, 400 years after King James, we're still accusing the seat of the Antichrist to being Babylon and Rome and the Pope, then that is kind of hilarious, and I'm going to keep discovering this net void journey. Thanks for letting me know that the audio is good. That's super helpful to me. I appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for subscribing to this channel. What else I have to say is goodbye for now. I will be doing some live streams in London. It might be some audio issues there too, so I really appreciate. Stand by. I will be back in about a week, so that'll be fun to kind of pick up where this left off and have some more evidence of what is going on here. So have a beautiful week and see you next time on the stream. Bye now. Thanks so much for hanging out in the chat, and it seems like the Bible is one of the best Kabbalistic books ever written. It would help the reader significantly to know or learn Hebrew so that the reader won't be misled by English translation. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, of course. That would be so incredible if we could look at some of the origins like they did with the conducting the research for the King James Bible. They had to look at all the original sources like the Geneva Bible, but also the Hebrew and Greek original text. So thank you for sharing that. Cool. It's gonna be hot in London. Yeah. That's good. It's kind of cold out here most of the day, so most of the year, I mean. Okay, cheers. Bye y'all. Enjoy your day. See ya.